Hi, my YouTube friends, and welcome back to my channel. I am Dee, and you are viewing The How To Lady. My channel offers information related to a plethora of things. We look at health, fitness, we do organization, DIYs. I may even talk about counseling because I'm a licensed counselor. I may offer information relative to healthy eating. I like to view my channel as eclectic, and it offers various things for many people. So if you're interested, stay tuned. And we're gonna get this ball rolling, and we're gonna knock it out of the park. Today's video addresses the various conditions and concerns related to caring for aquatic plants. Hello everyone. As indicated in the introduction, this segment is about aquatic plants. Unlike soil-based plants, aquatic plants are already sitting in water, so therefore you do not have to worry about watering it. However, sometimes the water gets a little murky and you don't like the look of it, and you're wondering about whether you should change that water. Here are situations where I will assess each concern and put a solution in place. Keeping the water clear and clean is important to the health of aquatic and water garden plants. The plant looks like it's sitting in murky water. That may not be the case. The roots on the plants just may be dark, and it's not necessary to change the water. This plant has dark roots, and the water can look a little murky. But changing the water is not something that I would do. The plant looks like it's growing very well, and I would just keep it in this water and keep it moving. Aquatic plants that appear to have some root concerns need to be addressed immediately. In this situation, the water looks very clear, and it looks like the plant is doing well. However, there is a plant at the top whose roots look a little suspicious. So I suspect that there is something actually going on with that plant. Now, I would probably remove that plant from this container, and I would replace the water with fresh room temperature water and find a different situation for this particular plant. Sometimes there could be debris floating around in the water, and this could cause problems for the plant. Addressing it immediately is the first course of action. For this plant, though the water looks nice and clear on the surface, when I look at the bottom of the plant, I see some things sort of swimming around in there. It lets me know that there's something settling at the bottom. It doesn't look good to me. However, I will keep an eye on this plant because the roots look very healthy. I don't see anything suspicious going on. Sometimes it can be leaves that are down in the plant that are falling off, and you may want to rinse it out then. But other than that, I'm going to keep my eye on this plant. Keeping a close eye on plant growth is also important. As for this aquatic plant sitting in jewels, I can still see the roots on the plant. They look healthy. The plant is growing just fine. This was a plant that came back from a very troubling time, but it's making its way back. It only had this one leaf left on the plant, and now it has lots of new leaves that are coming up. So this plant is doing just fine. I keep the water somewhat halfway. I don't fill it all the way up to the top because I don't want to overdo it with this plant, but it's doing really well. So we can leave this plant right where it is. Understanding water levels for aquatic plants is very important. Some aquatic plants can only tolerate their roots submerged in water. Now for this beauty. This is a plant that I really enjoy watch growing. It was a piece of another plant that I place in this container. Now the water is somewhat murky. This is a situation where I would probably change out the water. However, when you put water back in this container, be careful not to submerge those leaves in the water. Now, most aquatic plants that are in these clear jars, you're going to have that water staining that is on the glass. But I usually try to go in, and some people don't suggest this, but I try to go in, take the plant out, and go in and clean the jar, not with a harsh detergent, but with some type of scouring device so that I can get as much of the water stains off as possible. I will rinse off the roots of the plant because debris still gets down inside of these containers because they're open, and dust settles down in there, and that can't be good for the plant. So this is a situation where I would go in and change the water, rinse off the roots of the plant, clean the jar, and then put the plant back in the container and make sure that I do not submerge the leaves of the plant in the water because those leaves are trying to grow. Based on my experience, the age of a plant determines its ability to adjust to a new aquatic home. This beauty, if you saw my last video where I show you how to start an aquatic plant from soil to water. And this one is growing just fine. I like what it looks like. It's coming along great. And the other thing I want to mention is that when I removed this plant, I saw some yellowing leaves and opted not to remove those leaves, but since then have removed those leaves. You don't want a plant to put a lot of energy into leaves that are not in the best of health. So I removed those leaves. And not only does it help the plant with growth, but it also looks much nicer. So I will leave this plant in its current situation and keep an eye on it and make any necessary changes. It's great when you have an aquatic plant that has no concerns. All right, guys, this is going to be the last one, but this for me is the ideal situation. The water is nice and clear. You see the roots are doing their thing, they're growing, and the plant, of course, is growing. I think this is the ideal situation. There is not a lot of staining of this container because the opening on this container is very small. So very little dust and dirt and debris can get down in the jar. That may make a difference. So the ideal aquatic situation. Here are some possible solutions for addressing the stains on the jars of aquatic plants. Here is a solution for the staining of the jar. We do have a little staining on this jar. However, you can barely see it. And why? Because the jar is colored. It came this way, and I noticed that though it is a glass jar and it still gives you the transparency to see the beautiful roots on the plant growing, because of the color, the staining of the jar is not very obvious. So there's another situation you can think about. So here's the jar that I was speaking of earlier. The water does look really murky. There's some stuff going around in there that I don't think is good for the plant. I stick by my disclaimer. I'm not a plant expert, but I am a plant lover with experience. So I'm going to clean this jar only with a Brillo pad, and just try and get some of that out, and then rinse off the roots of the plant and put it back in the jar. So as I'm cleaning the jar, I'm using a fork with this Brillo pad, twisting it around because the neck is narrow, twisting it around to get out some of the stains that are inside of the jar. And hopefully this will clear up the jar and it will look nicer. All right, so I came up with 2 different watering situations. The smaller plant that was down inside of this jar, I decided to put it in a tiny container so that it wouldn't be submerged. And then the jar that I just cleaned, it looks nice and fresh and it's ready to go back. After cleaning this container and changing the water, I think these plants have a cool looking home. I took out the smaller plant that was at the bottom because I didn't want it to be submerged in the water. So that looks so much better, doesn't it? Love it. So these are situations where you need to change the water. Here is the smaller plant, and as it grows, I will remove it from this small container and put it in a container that is conducive to the size of the plant. This is a better situation for this aquatic plant because I think it won't feel so submerged or crowded like it was in the container. So there you have it, my friends. Determining when it is time to change the water on your aquatic house plants. Thank you for watching, my friends, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.